And just incredible. That name right there, before we even get to ECW and all your matches, just incredible. Who created that name?
It was not me, and believe it or not, it was not Paul Heyman. It was one of Paul's younger wrestlers. He went to the wrestling school, and he was actually on Ring Crew. And later on, he ended up wrestling as Bilvis Wesley, the Elvis character in ECW. Short stint, but he came up with the character for himself. And Paul paid him 500. He came up with the name Just Incredible, not the character, but the name. He saw it on a bumper sticker or something, and Paul said, "I don't see you with this name, but I'll pay you $500, but I'll give the name to someone else." So another, he came up with it, gave it to Paul, and Paul gave it to me. I guess he'd had that name for a little bit, and the rest I just kind of, just did myself. I was just trying to be, a little bit of Stone Cold, a little bit of Razor, a little bit of everything, just kind of inventing myself. And the character just kind of slowly came to me. I didn't plan anything. Nothing was predetermined. I just kind of did most of it out there, except, and the name and the catchphrase and all that just kind of slowly built.
Yeah, the presentation of you originally coming in and pretty much taking out, I guess you'd call them the ECW legends. That was kind of your thing when you first showed up. You were taking out all of these established ECW originals, and here you are coming in. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know that you were Aldo Montoya. Seeing the
Oh, wow.
the person you were and the person you have become, night and day. No one could have put you two up and go, I think that's the same person. So the
Yeah.
idea of you coming in with this strong push, whose idea again is this? Because again, you're before this, Aldo Montoya, great character, but now you're completely opposite of what you once were. Like, who is designing this? Who is getting all this going? Because it's a whole different ballgame.
I mean, I have to give that to Paul Heyman. I mean, especially the storylines. I mean, and the storyline certainly helped because the earlier onset of Just Incredible in '97 when I debuted, as it matured into '98 with the Impact Players, and then my '99 and 2000 when I had my title run, it just the more you just play with it, and wrestling too, and especially in ECW, I kind of was we were. How can I say this? Wrestling was so hot with the Monday Night Wars and stuff. I was just trying to stay current. And if I saw something, I would just borrow it. Like, I'd like to do a little Shawn. I'd like to do a little Razor. I'd like to do a little Flair. So I was just a mishmash of guys that I admired. And just being the way Paul booked me, just being a psycho heel, just be a mean guy. And put the emotions up to 12. And that's it. It really wasn't that hard, believe it or not. Just he let you go free with it. And I just had a good time, and everybody was so wonderful to work with.
It's insane that at the time, we have the internet in today's world where you can just Google anyone. But at the time, if you wanted to see a picture just incredible, you probably had to go buy a magazine. And so in these
Right.
magazines, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, just incredible. Like that's how everyone got to see more of ECW. And your look again, you had, I believe it was like black tights underneath jean shorts, and then you had
Yes.
your top, which is usually like the Impact Player shirt or your shirt in general, the kendo stick. You had the
Yep.
women, you had the powerhouses, you had Lance Storm. Like, the presentation for you was so as a 13-year-old kid at the time watching it, you go like, damn, I want to be him. Like, I want to act like him. He has this attitude, this
That's so
swagger
funny.
about
Yeah.
him. And
Yeah.
so seeing that look, how are you feeling about that at the time? Because ECW, third biggest company at the time, maybe even second compared to some people's opinions. And yet here you are, tag team champion, and then eventually world champion. Like, what's going through your
Yeah.
brain during all of this?
I mean, it was wild. It was so much fun. I never would have imagined it. And really quick, it'll be a fun little story. The reason I started wearing that stuff, it wasn't planned. My first ever match in ECW, I wore the Aldo stuff because that's all I had. And then the next day, we were debuting the Justin character at the ECW arena. So back this is the '90s. Everybody wore jean shorts. It was summertime. I just put on some black leggings, like one of my wife's leggings. We all wore those high-tech black boots, that Austin used to wear. We all had them on, back in those days. And Heyman just gave me an ECW shirt. So that just became the uniform. But it was all accidental. None of it was like orchestrated. Believe it or not, none of it was like orchestrated. It all just kind of happened. So yeah, that's That's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, it was just again, it was just a wonderful time to be a wrestling fan and to be a wrestler. There was just so much great stuff happening, and I wouldn't have left ECW for all the money in the world because we had we were like the cool kids. We were like punk rock. We were so cool and ahead of everyone else. You know, you could say the Attitude Era came out of ECW, or at least some of the ideas of what we were doing with the music and with the angles and the risque stuff. So it was just a great time. We were doing great business too. So it was a lot, and the money was not that bad. I was making over 100 grand a year, working 2 nights a week, close to home. I was home a lot, you know, so it was not a bad gig, you know.
So you brought up the ECW money. I guess what's the difference between the ECW money versus your Aldo Montoya money?
I made more in ECW,
Wow.
believe it or not. Yeah. Which
Wow.
is wild, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you think.
You would think. Well, at WWE, like I said, the business was down. I was making 75 grand a year and on the road a lot too. Right. So in ECW, I'm towards the end, I was making 3 grand a week, which I think ends up like $150,000 a year. I mean, it's not like millionaire money, but don't get me wrong. Working 2 nights a week, making 3 grand a week is not a bad, you know, you work a Friday and a Saturday, you know, that's a great gig, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm doing something I love and I'm passionate about. And, you know, it was just, it was perfect for me. And I didn't need to make $1 billion. I was happy doing that. I knew that if I went somewhere else, I may not get that opportunity, even though the money might be better.
And of course, your finisher was a variation of the Tombstone Pile Driver, and that's incredible. And yet, where did anyone ever speak up or say something to you, being like, "Well, that'd be like someone doing the Stone Cold Stunner." I know Mikey Whipwreck was doing that before even Austin was using it, but like here you are, you're using a very popular wrestler's finisher, but you're doing a variation of it. Is there ever
Yeah.
backlash or people going, "Oh, you're ripping them off"?
No, not at all. Not at all. And again, that also happened by accident because the first match where I debuted, I wrestled Jerry Lynn, which ended up being one of my guys that I feuded with historically over the title and so forth. And he beat me for the title, actually. And we did it as a spot where he kicked out in our first match. I was trying to get over a spinning DDT as my finish. And I guess Paul Heyman went back and watched the tape. And he said, PJ, don't do that. Do that tombstone. It looked really good. We did like some reversals out of it, you know, some bridges into me having and tombstoning him. And Paul said, that looks dope with the little corkscrew. And that just, again, accidentally just, you know, sometimes you can't write it as good as it, you know what I mean? You just sometimes have to notice what pops out there.
And man, at the time though, I remember it was so hard to find ECW like music because I didn't know where to find it. You had Napster, of course, and then
Yeah,
eventually
right.
you had like
Yeah,
all these weird websites. I remember trying to figure out what your music was and what Lance Storms or Mike Awesome or Rhino.
yeah,
It turned into quite an event because you're using music that is
right.
not owned by ECW. So eventually, when you would buy these VHS tapes, these DVDs, they didn't have a certain element of the music. But that's what made, I think, the live events.
Yes.
You'd watch it on pay-per-view, and you like hear the Sandman coming down to
Yeah,
Metallica. It was crazy, and the fans were so rabid. But again, we talked about it. ECW, though. Cyber Slam 2000 is where you become ECW World Champion. Now,
yes.
how are you feeling throughout that day? And of course, how and when are you told you're going to get this championship? Because there was a lot of shit going on in ECW with Mike
Right.
Awesome and
Yep.
Taz. And here you come in, slipping into that dirty heel, eventually getting a championship match, and you win.
I didn't find out until about halfway during the show. Believe it or not, yeah.
What?
All I noticed was my name was not on the you know the Paul would put up the list of matches, and I noticed like my name is not on it, which was odd, you know, because regardless, I would always do something, you know, wherever. So I was like, oh my God, do I have heat? Am I something wrong here? Did I do something wrong? I'm not on the show, and so we wait and wait, and then you know, like maybe 15 minutes before the match goes out, Paul gets me together with everybody and kind of explains what's happening. So the only person I think that knew, we obviously, because I think Mike Awesome dropped the title to Taz in Indianapolis.
Yes.
And then Taz and Dreamer wrestled at the arena. And Dreamer beat Taz because Taz was on loan from the WWE at the time. And I believe then that's when I kind of came in. And of course, you got to double cross Tommy because Tommy can never have his glory for too long. That's just his gimmick, right? And he wouldn't want it any other way. And that there came I think Francine turned heel there on Tommy, and I beat him 1, 2, 3 for the belt in an impromptu match. So yeah, I just found out halfway through that I was going to be the world champion, which was wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would have
Wow.
never thought my first real singles title too, ever.